Allah, the Merciful, the Beneficent. Now with the main headlines. Hijab not allowed during exams, Karnataka Education Minister says. Myanmar UN expert decries launch of shameful, catastrophic cuts in food aid for Rohingya in Bangladesh. Pakistan crackdown on Afghan refugees leaves 4 dead and thousands in cells. TTP aims to push Pakistan government out of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, US report says. Assalamu alaikum dear viewers, this is Arush Fatima Malik and you're watching Shia Waves live from London at Imam Hussein TV 3. Karnataka Education Minister B.C. Nagesh on Friday asserted that students wearing hijab will not be allowed inside the examination. The examinations are set to begin from March 9th in the state. Speaking to reporters, he mentioned that it has been clarified that all students should attend exams wearing uniforms. Hijab is not part of it. Those who want to write exams wearing hijab won't be allowed into the examination hall, he added. Many students abstained from attending the examination as they were not allowed to wear hijab and write exams. The hijab crisis in Karnataka became international news as it turned into a law and order problem and communal issue. Hindu activists and minority groups came to a confrontational position. The crisis also had a deep impact on the psyche of the students and divided them on the basis of religion in campuses. The Karnataka High Court has rejected the applications in regard by students and upheld the government order on uniforms. It has also said hijab is not an essential part of Islam. The UN Special Reporter on the situation of human rights in Myanmar, Tom Andrews, made an urgent appeal to member states today to reverse the shameful, catastrophic cuts to food rations for Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh that began to be implemented on 1st March. These ration cuts are a stain on the conscience of the international community. I've spoken with desperate families on the campus who have already had to cut back on essential food items due to a spike in prices. Reversing these cuts in food aid is literally a matter of life and death for Rohingya families, said Andrews. The UN expert issued the plea in a letter to UN member states to what could be a series of cuts in food rations for Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh by the World Food Programme. The cuts could exceed 30% of current allocations to Rohingya refugees. Refugees are reportedly dying in Pakistani prisons and children are being arrested and tied together with ropes as a wave of detentions and deportations spreads fear among the hundreds of thousands of Afghans who have crossed the border since the Taliban took power, according to media reports. At least 4 people have died in custody and thousands more, including children, are being held in prisons as Pakistan hardens its stance against Afghan citizens. The most recent death in custody was a 50-year-old Afghan man who was refused hospital treatment while he waited for a judge to hear his case. According to Muneza Kakar, a Karachi-based human rights lawyer who's been fighting to stop Afghan asylum seekers and refugees being deported to Afghanistan. Kakar claimed that other Afghans in detention were being mistreated and the judicial process was not being carried out properly by judges assigned to their cases. Since the Taliban seized power in August 2021, about 250,000 Afghans have arrived in Pakistan. Last summer, it began a program to send undocumented migrants back across the border. Since then, arrests and deportations have increased, with more than 600 Afghans allegedly deported in just 3 days in January and thousands more detained. Let us remind our respected viewers of today's headlines. Hijab not allowed during exams, Karnataka Education Minister says. Myanmar, UN expert decries launch of shameful, catastrophic cuts in food aid for Rohingya in Bangladesh. Pakistan crackdown on Afghan refugees leaves 4 dead and thousands in cells. Also tonight. World organizations call on Canada to study growth of movement linked to Indian ruling regime. A US State Department report has warned that the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan (TTP) aims to push the government of Pakistan out of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and establish Sharia by waging a terrorist campaign against the military and state. Pakistan-based Dawn newspaper reported, according to the 2021 Country Reports on Terrorism, the TTP uses the tribal belt along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border to train and deploy its operatives. As per the US State Department report, TTP draws ideological guidance from Al-Qaeda, while elements of Al-Qaeda rely in part on TTP for safe haven in the Pashtun areas along the Afghan-Pakistan border. This arrangement has given TTP access to both Al-Qaeda's global terrorist network and its members' operational expertise. According to the report, Pakistan experienced significant terrorist activity in recent years. And now we continue with some short news. The former president of the Romanian Republic, Mr. Emil Constantinescu, and the head of the Middle East Organization for Academic Studies in Europe, received the deputy of the Supreme Religious Authority, Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq al-Husseini al-Shirazi, Hujjat al-Islam wal-Muslimin, Sheikh Sahla Sabu at Sapienza University in the Italian capital, Rome. The attendees discussed the importance of consolidating humanitarian and religious principles in the school curriculum to educate future generations. His Eminence Sheikh Sahla gifted His Excellency, Mr. Emil, the book Politics from the Perspective of Islam, translated to English. The head of the World Health Organization on Wednesday visited earthquake-ravaged northwest Syria, becoming the first senior UN official to enter the region since war erupted in the country 12 years ago this month. I have rarely been so disturbed and heartbroken, said World Health Organization Director General. The earthquake that struck more than 3 weeks ago adds unimaginable suffering to people who have already suffered so much over 12 years of war, economic collapse, the COVID-19 pandemic, and an ongoing cholera outbreak. He underlined the UN agency's commitment to continue to assist Syrians, but urged greater international support for the recovery and rebuilding efforts. The spokesman for Iraq's Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Major General Yahya Rasool, announced on Thursday that 3 ISIS terrorists were killed in a security operation in Anbar Governorate, 118 kilometers west of Baghdad. Rasool said forces led by Al Jazeera operations and with the participation of the tribal mobilization forces carried out a preemptive operation besieging a den where the terrorists killed were hiding. Pakistan is facing an economic crisis so dire that it risks defaulting on its debt. The country has already been reeling from the catastrophic floods in 2022 that submerged nearly a third of the country, causing flood and fuel prices to soar beyond the means of many people. The situation is expected to worsen as the World Food Programme estimates that by the end of March, More than 5 million people will be a step away from famine levels of hunger, according to official reports by NPR. The Pakistan Country Director, Chris Kay, commented saying it's frightening, and particularly when you balance it against what's happening next door in Afghanistan. A hidden sealed-off corridor that dates back some 4,500 years has been discovered close to the main entrance inside one of the Great Pyramids of Gaza, just outside of Cairo, which could lead to further findings. Egypt's Antiquities Authorities revealed this week the corridor on the northern side of the Pyramid of Khufu was discovered using modern scanning technology. It measures 9 meters, nearly 30 feet in length, and is over 2 meters wide, perched above the main entrance of the pyramid. Archaeologists have not yet ascertained the function of the chamber, which is not accessible from the outside. In 2017, scientists announced the discovery of another sealed-off corridor, a 30-meter chamber, or about 98 feet, also inside the pyramid. Canada shouldn't allow a movement out of India that dissements hate and victimises religious minority groups to entrench itself in this country, according to a report released Wednesday by the National Council of the Canadian Muslims and the World Sikh Organisation of Canada, CBC, reported on 1st of March. The report, called Rashtriya Sangh Network in Canada, documents the roots of the RSS movement in India and its extensive global reach, promoting far-right views in various ways. It's one of the most influential organisations in the world, said Stephen Zoe, a spokesperson for the National Council of Canadian Muslims. According to the report, the RSS is at the core of a network of groups seeking to remake India into a country run by and for Hindus first, at the expense of the country's dizzying slew of minority groups, said Zoe. Zoe, a former researcher with the Canadian Anti-Hate Network who has chronic far-right movements within diaspora groups, told CBC in a previous interview, Hindu Vata is a superficial politicization of Hinduism and has led to discrimination and sectarian violence against minority groups in India like Muslims and Christians. The report on RSS highlights how the movement is operating in Canada, including through political lobbying and through seemingly cultural organisations that have charitable status. We have reached the end of today's Shia Waves show. Let's remind our viewers of today's headlines. Hijab not allowed during exams, Karnataka Education Minister says. Myanmar UN expert decries launch of shameful, catastrophic cuts in food aid for Rohingya in Bangladesh. Pakistan crackdown on Afghan refugees leaves 4 dead and thousands in cells. TTP aims to push Pakistan government out of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, US report says. World organisations call on Canada to study growth movement linked to Indian ruling regime. You can view the latest news on Shia Waves website, and you can send news of your city or country to be published on our news agency. Contact us on the numbers at the bottom of the screen. This is the end of today's news. Thank you all for watching. We pray to Allah Almighty to hasten the reappearance of the master of our time. Wa alaikum assalam.
السلام عليك يا حجت الله فی ارضه. السلام علیکم.